Hello, welcome to Season 9 of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. The theme of this season is 100 Years of Horror. We're going to watch two horror movies from every decade, from 1920 to 2020, in chronological order. We want to see where horror came from, how it's changed, and maybe even make some predictions about where it's going. If you want to see the full list of movies we'll be reviewing this season and follow along, then check out our website at thehorrific.com. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the episode. So, I obviously knew Evil Dead 2 existed, but I didn't know anything about it, and I had no idea it was such a higher budget than the first.
Yeah, you could tell it was a higher budget just like from watching it.
You could tell because of how it is?
Yeah.
It's pretty neat.
Ah, dang it. Okay. Yeah, that was holstered.
I like it. But yeah, so it was interesting to me though, because I feel like it was still very true to the original. I feel like it was very much in the same spirit as Evil Dead, the only original. Wow, we're off to a great start.
We're doing good. We're doing good.
But I feel like in general, like, fans of the first one were probably pretty happy with this one.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that they came back to watch this one, and this one's what kind of spurred, the cult following of Evil Dead, in my opinion. It was 6 years later from when the first one came out. But I felt like this one was the one that really put, like, Bruce Campbell, like, on the map, in a way.
Well, and I feel like a thing that you see often with movies, but also, like, big time with music, is you have an original, and it has, like, a super loyal, like, fan base, and there are people who are just, like, obsessed with it because of what it is. And then the directors and the producers or whatever, or the band, come back for the second release, and it's this question of, do I double down and do the thing that everybody who really likes the first one likes? Or do I try and make this a more like mass appeal, kind of open, big, generally acceptable, like maybe tone down some of the sharp edges about what people liked about that first thing to try and get to a wider audience? And I feel like this one definitely doubled down.
Yeah, it dug its heels in. Is, trying to make that continuous story kind of thing, I feel like.
Yeah. So anyway, I didn't know what to expect. I looked at budget numbers and I was fearful, and then I watched it and I was like, okay. So I am going to introduce it, and then you can do your fun facts, and then we will just chainsaw our way right through the details of this movie. In 1987, De Laurentiis Entertainment Group brought us Evil Dead 2, a psychedelic horror film written and directed by Sam Raimi and starring Bruce Campbell. In Evil Dead 2, Raimi has Campbell resuming his role as Ash in a bloody fever dream of horror set in a remote cabin. This movie was made on a budget of $3.5 million, nearly 10 times that of the original, and brought in over $10 million at the box office. It can currently be rented for streaming on Amazon Prime Video. What did you learn about this movie?
So, there was influence from the Hamburger Helper. You remember those old commercials of the Hamburger Helper with the glove? That was, kind of... Yeah. So anyway, this is where it gets interesting. To refine the script for Evil Dead 2, Sam Raimi brought in his friend, Scott Spiegel. Spiegel influenced a lot of franchises' direction with his addition to the films, including an added emphasis on the slapstick humor, along with Three Stooges, which was an influence on the entire series. One of the influences was Spiegel's short film Attack of the Helping Hand, where the Hamburger Helper mascot goes on a violent rampage. The scene where Ash has to fight against his own hand was influenced by the short. I was thinking of, there was movie out that had Idle Hands, which I thought was influenced by this movie, but it sounds like it was off of Spiegel's short. Anyway.
Which was off of a commercial.
Yeah. So Stephen King had some input on this. The film needed a distributor. Stephen King had such a profound experience watching the original Evil Dead that he publicly endorsed the film. King mentioned the idea of producing a sequel to the movie Kingpin, Dino De Laurentiis, and history was made. Ironically, De Laurentiis had offered the adaptation of King's Thinner to Sam Raimi, but the offer was turned down. However, it seems that De Laurentiis didn't really hold grudges, as he was willing to take a chance on the sequel to The Evil Dead. Interesting. So there's a rights. I don't remember if we talked about this with the original Evil Dead, but did you know there was a rights to the film issue with this, which is what led to the remake of Evil Dead?
Oh, no.
So there was a rights issue with this film, meaning that they couldn't get footage from the first one because the first Evil Dead, the original, was distributed by New Line Cinema, where Evil Dead 2 was distributed by Dino De Laurentiis, which meant that Raimi and his crew couldn't get the rights to their own movie. This led to the first few minutes of Evil Dead 2 being a scaled-down recap of the first film that boils down the plot of the first film fairly quickly. Despite the opening of Evil Dead 2 almost making the original film redundant, it's fairly easy to splice the two films together into one. So they were trying to continue the story. They couldn't because New Line Cinema was like, fuck that. Not only are we not going to distribute this second film, we're not going to give you rights to it either. And they were like, we got it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, sweetheart. That's what they said. That's a quote. Freddy Krueger's glove, did you see it in this film?
I did not.
So it was next to it, the main door in this film, which I thought, yeah, I like those, throw those little things in there. You know, what can you do? So the last film that I have for this is the original film was controversial for its staggering level of violence and gore, so much so that it was dubbed a quote video nasty in England. Everyone knew that Evil Dead 2 would be given X by the MPAA, so Raimi, Campbell, and Robert Tappert came up with a plan. At the time, Dino De Laurentiis had a deal with the MPAA that prohibited him from releasing X-rated films. So Raimi and the crew set up the Rosebud Releasing Corporation, which allowed them to distribute the movie without the MPAA's input. You know what I call that? Genius.
I thought you were going to say Kansas City Shuffle.
That is a Kansas City Shuffle if I've ever seen one. That's for damn sure. But those are my facts.
Nice. Yeah, so like we were talking about, this one definitely felt very much like a double down on the first one. It felt like they took all the things that people liked about the first one and then just like dumped a lot more money on the ideas and continued. And so there was definitely a lot of like DIY creativity in this. Like there were a lot of scenes that I was just like, that's actually really creative, but not like super special effects department-y. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like just the scenes of like the low to the ground, fast moving camera and how it's almost like you're about to get attacked by a snake or something, or like a thing you can't see, or the way they would do the smoke coming out of the trees in reverse to make it feel like the demons were like pulling back and stuff. Like there was just a lot of stuff about the filming that I thought was really creative. And it's nice that even though they had a lot more budget, they still relied on kind of like the do-it-yourself approach to create a lot of those moments.
Yeah, I think that was the thing. Like watching this, it was the weirdest thing in the world because it was like in one scene you would see like the cabin, and it did definitely look like it was just like a built on set cabin, like almost like small scale. But then they had like the different filming techniques that they were able to try out. I assume because they didn't have like a huge distributing company like grilling them. But it was just like, it was strange because it was like some of the things seemed like super cheap.
Yes.
But almost like it was super cheap on purpose. Like to mimic the original. But it was just all part. Like, I think that is probably one of the reasons why people love this film so much, is because of just those off-brain ideas of like, it looks like a really old movie in a sense of like if the cabin, a couple of cabin scene shots were in black and white, you couldn't have told me that wasn't from like the 20s, or 30s.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But then, obviously it goes into it and you have better, special effects going on, and it's just like they were trying to throw you for a curveball throughout the film.
Yeah, and even just like, it added to the horror feeling of the movie too. Like when the blood would hit the light bulb and then it turns the whole room red, or when Ash is talking to himself in the mirror and then the reflection pops out and grabs him by the throat, and then it switches to that like overhead from behind shot where you see the hands around his neck, but then it zooms back a little bit, like the angle changes and you see he's got like his own hands around his throat. Mm-hmm. Like just the way that they set some of that stuff up was really cool, like really, really well executed, I thought. And so it was interesting because some of the visuals were so like goofy, mm-hmm. but a lot of the execution of the filming, I thought, was just really, really well done.
Yeah, see, that's where I kind of get torn on this film. Is like I appreciate the goofy,
yeah,
especially because like I watched this after watching Suspiria, which was a very serious film,
for sure.
And then you see this, and it was kind of nice, a little lighthearted, but like it does get difficult sometimes because it's like they weren't making fun of the genre. Like I think they were kind of I felt like they were legitimately doing their own thing, but there were just a couple times where it's like, yeah, the humor's great. Like if I'm watching like a full blood horror film, it's great to kind of break up the intensity with a laugh. Mm-hmm. But after reading the facts of them talking about based off of influenced by
Three Stooges.
Three Stooges. I kept wanting to say Three Ninjas, but Three Stooges. I think they accomplished what they wanted, but that's I guess that was one of my bigger complaints, if you want to call it one. It was just like, I laughed a lot in this film, and that may have just been by design, which it sounds like, but I could see how people could have problems with it and not like it, but I could see how people could for sure like it. I don't know if I necessarily understand the cult following of the film, and it's not because I thoroughly enjoy this film. I bought this film while watching it halfway through. But
oh wow, nice.
Yeah, it was just like one of those where it's like, this is one I need, mm-hmm. And but it just got, I don't know.
Yeah, for me it was leaning a little bit too much into the comedy, mm-hmm. and there were times where it was kind of like quick and clever in the middle of other stuff happening that I liked it. Like when he goes to get the chainsaw and he pulls back the curtain and there's just like the white chalk outline of where the chainsaw should be. That was just so absurd that in the moment I laughed out loud.
Yeah.
But then like the extended bit where he was fighting his own hand and like the little sound effects that the hand was making, I just hated. And that felt like it went on forever, and it felt very much like it was targeted towards children. And then there was the part where like Linda's corpse comes out of the ground, and it's like a claymation thing, felt very like Nightmare Before Christmassy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's like starts dancing around, and like it was not scary at all. It was just, I don't know. When it finally started attacking him and like she had like the real like made up face, like that was a lot better. But there were some places where I felt like it just tried to like sit in that horror or in the comedy for longer than it should have. Mm-hmm. And I get that some of it, like it was still like gross or like shocking or whatever, but it just wasn't. It didn't do it for me the way the more like horror parts of the movie did.
Yeah. I mean, yet again, thoroughly enjoyed it, but it was just like, oh, okay, this is. It was like, that's a prime example, like what you're talking about with her coming out of the ground. Like, that's where it seemed like it was almost kind of cheap.
Yeah.
Cheaply done. But, like, that's still, like, 10 times further than they could have done in the original. So, it was, yeah, but, I mean, you know, did it, I don't want to say I necessarily went into this film thinking it was full-fledged, like, straight horror, not horror comedy or anything.
Yeah.
But I realized shortly after that it was a comedy as well.
Yeah.
Which, you know, which maybe have to do with the style that they were, you know, kind of, it was very DIY, 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 with the first one and having to keep that going with the second one. But, I don't know. I think out of the first two, like, I honestly kind of like the first one a little bit more personally. But
same. Yeah. Yeah, but I can also see, you know, like at the time, if you were a really big fan of the first one and like you were just like already obsessed with the idea and the character, and then this one came out and sort of played into all that, you know, this to me, like as a huge fan of the first one, would feel like a type of sequel I would be hoping for, as opposed to where like the sequel takes a turn or it doesn't put you back in the same world or whatever. Mm-hmm. So yeah. I did like this was so minor, but it made me laugh, where everybody's like together in the cabin and, you know, the mom's corpse is like down at the bottom and Ash is like, all right, we'll all go in together. And then Jake's like, hell no, you're the curious one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just because that's such like what would really happen in that moment.
100%.
Is like, we just met. We're not besties who are going to go like take on whatever dangerous thing is down there now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's 100% a real life scenario there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, like, it got confusing, like, at the beginning. Once, like, it took me a second to realize, like, oh, they're, like, what they were doing, recapping the first story. But it took me a second to get there. But I think from, like, then on, like, there wasn't a time where I was, like, bored with it, you know, like, it was just, like, there was constantly something happening. I thought it was, like, interesting to, like, the reason why the spells happened was because of the recording that he played.
And
it was
just
a cool idea.
The way that the possession would come and go was really a cool element that worked its way throughout all of this, like what they did with that. And just even like knowing that you had been possessed and then you kind of like wake back up or get back in control. And one thing that really stood out to me is like kind of disturbing in this one was the way that the possessed people would like turn back into themselves.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, I've been chased by this monster. I've gone and I've grabbed the chainsaw and now I'm going to tear it up. Oh no, now it's turned back into my mom. Or like, oh, now Linda's begging for her life. Mm-hmm. Or, you know what I mean? Like, that was just such a weird thing to think about, like in a situation like that where it's like full on fight to survive. Oh, but are they still in there? Is there still a way, you know, to like save or get the person back? And especially when like Ash himself is going through that, you kind of stop and think about it. It's like, well, I know if I'm not possessed all the time, then maybe they don't have to be possessed all the time anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then he was like, no, screw that, and just killed him.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah.
You're like, oh.
He turned into like a complete like superhero at the end. But yeah.
Yeah, in fact, if you read like the synopsis of this on IMDb, like it refers to him as the hero.
Yeah.
Which I think is great. But
yeah, and I feel like on the whole, this one, like I mentioned a couple times in the summary or the intro, that it feels like a fever dream, or it's almost like psychedelic horror in that it's almost like stream of consciousness. Like you don't necessarily get a lot of hand holding on like a narrative or anything. You never really figure out why the possession kind of comes and goes. Like it's just a series of disturbing events and a person being thrown into them. And I think that that works for a horror movie that's not too long.
Yeah. Yeah, that saved it right there.
So.
Yeah. I do like also how it continues, like, the story from the first one, basically, and then it goes into Army of Darkness, the third one of the series, which is...
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that.
Yeah.
The ending. I actually really like that Ash went through the portal.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like, in the traditional horror movie, you're always kind of, like, cheering that the good guys will, like, dispel the evil spirit or, you know, return it to its own world or whatever. But you never really think about where it goes. And so the idea that he, like, passed through that and then had that whole experience, it was just like, oh, interesting. So he's going too. And now you get to see that and see the other side of it. And it's not just like, oh, and then we kicked the enemy back through the portal and then it closed and now we're all safe forever. It's like, nah, I'm gone too. And so then he just landed in, like, medieval times. And I did note that the film quality at that point was just abysmal. Like
oh yeah.
I don't know if they just ran out of, like, camera rental budget or what, but that was rough. But then there at the very end, I thought he looked and sounded just like Jim Carrey in that closing scene when the knights are, like, all shouting hail and he's just shouting no. And it seemed like I don't know, very very like Truman Showy or something, where he's, like, in the middle of, like, knowing that he's in, like, a stage situation or anyway, it was weird.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. It did seem like the quality was, like, way low after it went to when he went to the Knights. But that's a good point about him going into it and not really going into the time warp, whatever it is, portal. Like, I never thought about that until you just said, like, you never really wonder where they go.
Yeah.
You know, maybe I just assumed they went back to hell, where they came from. But no, it was a good film. I was definitely happy with it, and it's in my top 13 of the season.
Nice. I like it. Yeah, definitely not like a bottom feeder for the ones we've watched this season. It is probably not one I'll go back to anytime soon. I think if I was in the mood, I would just rewatch the first one. But I am now mentally freed up to go watch Army of Darkness, which I've wanted to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I'll definitely watch all three because I own them now and I ain't wasting nothing.
It's because you got a kid coming soon. You got to revisit the classic.
That's true. Got to make him start watching it early, dude.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is crazy. Like, it's awesome to think that I get to be the one that screws him up for life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, shoes on the other foot.
Yeah. So I'm gonna end this podcast with one last trivia, real quick, because I think this is interesting. It does involve the actual movie per se.
What do I win if I get it right?
Popcorn for life.
All right. Stakes are high. I'm into it.
Well, it's just fun fact. I don't know what I thought you were going to guess my fun fact.
Oh. You said trivia, so I thought it was.
Well, it was like movie trivia. Oh, okay. How about this? I got it. Okay. So, you know how we talked about Spiegel, that Scott Spiegel guy?
Yeah.
Who Raimi brought in? Listen to this fact. He used to share a house in Los Angeles, California with directors Sam Raimi, Joel Cohen, and producer Ethan Cohen. Actresses Holly Hunter, Frances McDormand, and this lady from the movie Misery. You got to answer it in Jeopardy answer.
Who is Helen Hunt?
Nope. She was also, I'll just give you a little bit of trivia.
Okay.
About her. She was the voice of Bitsy the cow in Charlotte's Web.
Who is Judi Dench?
Very close. I'll give you one last fact.
Okay.
I'm really trying to find one that... Oh. She played Mama Boucher in The Waterboy.
I've known the whole time. I've just been playing along. It's obviously Mary Steenburgen.
Ah, you're so good and close. It was Kathy Bates.
Oh, there you go.
But isn't it crazy? Like they lived together, just like
that is quite the crew.
Yeah, no shit.
Like the net worth of that household now.
Well, and I think this might be the reason why you haven't gone as far as you should have with music is because of who you're associating with. Talking about me.
Oh, I thought you were hating on my wife.
Well, me and Sarah.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I got for this film.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening. Oh, and I should have mentioned Reservoir Dogs. I do like that one.
Yeah,
I need to
too.
rewatch that sometime soon.
Reservoir
I don't
Dogs
think it's
good.
as good as people make it out to be, but I still think it's good.
Yeah. See, that's the one that I think the dialogue gets a little long sometimes for me. Like when they go on like the tipping thing, but...
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mr. Pink.
I know. Any film with Steve Buscemi in it.
Yeah. It's going to be hard to miss.
Yeah.
Okay. So Evil Dead 2. My smooth transition.
It was good. It was good. Better than what I could have done.
All right, I'm going to reset. We can clip that part for the end or something.